So I am sure everybody are excited, no? Good for those who actually made an advanced reading. And I know also, I understand nga no, ang uban wala kabasa kay it's just this morning na ko gisend, no? So, okay, so I am going to proceed no with my slide, which is the slide number 2. We have the moralities to the quality of goodness or badness in a human act. So, it actually defines the morality. Okay, di ba no? Last time no, we defined morality as the basis or it is the measures of the goodness or the badness of an act, or the wrongness or the correctness of an act. So that's actually how the morality is actually being defined. Now, uh, here, there is almost morality is not an imagined quality merely supposed to be found in human acts. And yes, no, of course, it's not just an imagination. No, we can never say that ang morality is pwede lang no nga just a product of an imagination of an individual. No, like for example, when we are going to do such act like atong luwaan ang naong sa usa ka tawo. So of course, for us, no, that's how we understand that is morally right for us. Kaya you know why? Mabito na no nga basically ang gipahimang no gid sa tuwa no, wa gyud na siya giwala no that the home, no, it's not the house but the home, no, para to make it more kana ba nga nindot kayo more meaningful kayo. Ang home is the basic, no, or it is the fundamental when it comes to the teachings of morality, di ba? Am I right, class? Di ba? Di am gina magsugod no sa ato ang balay no. Mabitaw na nga usahay kanang mga tuang mga manghod or kanang mga anak no. Dapat yun na sila tudluan no unsay sakto unsay sayop gani no dili kalikayan nga ato silang mabunalan og silig tukog kanang usa ka buok silig tukog no kay kanang kanang naa mga behavior kanang mangluwa magdepende mo na sa surroundings. So dako kay siya og kanang important kayo ang rule sa uh, usa ka maguwang or usa ka mingon taog kanang the older ones diha sa panimalay nga mo teach og sakto nga panglantaw when it comes to morality. It's not just a product of imagination that when a person can actually imagine nga siguro with what I am doing right now this is morally right. No, it's not like that because we have natay sumbanan no, natay batakan nga ato ang lantawon kung unsay sakto nga buhat ug unsay dili sakto. So okay, we have to proceed with the saying no, what he did is right. So mao na ito madunggan no, what he did was wrong, he behaved well, he should not have done it, he is not morally justified in doing the act, and etc. So there is a difference in opinion as to the nature of morality. So meaning to say, class, no, akong gi-mention kaganiha, it's not about the opinion of the people with what is good and what is right. Okay, usahay mo good, mingon man tanong we tend to rationalize no, by philosophizing, no? Na mingon ta nga no magbuot man ka. O if you are going to say nga akong gibuhat isayop, anyway, this is not your life. And what is that to you? Di ba na anak tanaw? Ano de, ano mangilabot man kanako ako amning kinabuhi, no? But the truth is of course we cannot help no to actually sa ato pa lang sa previous discussion ako no about sa kaning understanding the self no. Sa una, di ko kakalimot kaning gitawag na to og social punishment no. Okay, kaning social punishment mo na siya no nga ang tao by nature they are going to criticize because unsa may basis no sa ato ang lipunan, sa ato ang community, dili lang sa community but also to the entire state no? Ang tao we have to recognize no, we have to recognize, we have to realize also that there are specific measures of behaviors that is only acceptable sa ato nga community, di ba? Mabto na naibutang nga mga babala no, na mga babala na mga balaod, it's because it aims no to actually protect not only to the welfare of a single person but to the welfare of everybody. So it's not diri mao na siya no ma-justify siya that the morality is not an opinion no by nature but it is actually coming from the nature of the basis. Kuha na to class. So sa panlantaw, no, there is a basis, di ba? We all agree that there are some actions that are good and some actions that are bad. So mo na siya, no? Ato nang na kuan na ato nang napatinaw what morality is all about. Now, ang being the basis, no? So what is actually being anchored with that basis? So we have this what we call the norms of morality. So the norms of morality, it is the basis of the distinction between right and wrong in human actions. So just like for example, maingon ko ninyo, uh, ang usa ka babay ning tuman sa iyang inahan nga gisugo og hugas plato, giingnan ka, oy dai tsunami, hugasi ang plato. Ug tuod man, gihugasan ni tsunami ang plato. So unsa may asa man nato makategorize ang pagsunod ni tsunami sa sugo siyang mama? Is it morally right or morally wrong?
Morally right.
Morally right, no? Naa siya sa morally right. What about kani? Gituman ni tsunami pero ningon siya, kapuya sa ninyo, ako nang hugas ginang buntag, karong udto ako na sa gihapon. Nagabi ha, ako na sa niya ha. Ay na sa niya pahugasan na bunsoy ha. Ah, asa man nato makategorize? So of course,
Wrong.
sa
Morally wrong.
wrong, no? Kaya nga
Wrong.
no, nituman siya, no? Nituman siya pero daman bagulbol, no? Yun. Ay pangigo sir. Dewita no. Anyway, that's just an example, no? At least simple lang jud kay na class. I know this is very understandable to everybody. And as a matter of fact, I believe that everybody here in this section are intelligent. Okay? So let's proceed with no questions with the slide number 2. Class?
Wala
Wala
ra,
ra?
sir.
Okay, good. No, if you do. We have to proceed with letter B, no, the human acts and acts of men. So human acts are actions which man performs knowingly, freely, and voluntarily. So in other words, these actions are the results of conscious knowledge, no? Natay sakto nga kaalam, natay sakto nga pagkahibalo, no? And subject to the control of the will. So mingon tag subject to the control of the will, unsa maning will sa sa Bisaya class. Mingon ta og will. Unsa man na siya? Anyone? No? Anyone? Kisa may makahuna-huna. Di ba? Mingon ta og will. So of course, coming from the will of
Imo
the
nga
person,
kabubuton.
yes, kabubuton, no? Kabubuton sa usa ka tawo. Okay? So, na kay kaalam about sa imong gibuhat, at the same time imo lang gibuhat because it's not against your will, no? That is uh that is not beyond your control, no? But that is under your control. Okay? Just like for example, mingon ta singing when happy. So of course, wala may magbuot nimo, no? Wala may magbuot sa tao no nga musing ka when you are happy. Na mingon ka, for example, class mo anak ka no nga sa ana ni ka iunin mo yawi. Yawi, iunin mo ang gripo mga la 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 la. To be do be do. Ana ni ka no? Wala magbuot nimo, no? Because that is your happiness. And everyone are actually everybody has freedom not to enjoy about your happiness. So actually and voluntarily, that becomes an example of this what we call human acts because you have the knowledge and you actually celebrated, no, with that knowledge that you have. So you know yourself that you're happy, so therefore automatically nahimo ra siyang automatic nga imong nabuhat nga ningkanta ka, no? What about watching movie? So of course usahay no maka kuan ta usahay makaano ta laay man, no? Mutanaw ka kog salida, no? Actually murag nindot kay itong episode sa KMGS last Sunday ako tong tanawon bi, no? So that becomes voluntary, di ba? Because you allow yourself to coming from the consent of your own self, di ba? Coming from the consent of your own self. Dahil po kay nagtanaw kag TV pero walay consent sa imong galingon. So with the consent, no, nitanaw kag TV, it's because you know yourself that you have a free time. No, you have a vacant time. And at the same time also you want yourself to be entertained. Okay? What about reading your favorite books and magazines? So of course, that is being done, no? in accordance to your will. Wala may mingon nimo no nga, "Uy, basahan gud tay imong favorite nga magazine." So of course, ang imuha gid no is that becomes voluntary because you allow yourself. You have the knowledge, this is actually that book is my favorite. So, siguro na I have to spend time, no? That is coming from the consent of yourself. Nakuha na to, class?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
right? Okay. What about the acts of man? What is the difference between the two? Ningon dire, the acts of man are actions which man does knowingly, no? But not freely and voluntarily. To make the long story short, nakay kaalam no about nakay kaalam about the possible consequence, nakay kaalam on how to perform that one, but the problem is it's not coming from your kabubuton or kaning gitawag na to free will, no? There is that something that actually triggers, no, there's that stimulus that actually triggers the human person to perform such act. Nakuha na to, class? Nice something, nice stimulus, no? So meaning to say, for a certain condition or circumstances. Now, nakita ninyo ang example, breathing. Sir, kana ding breathing, sir, dili din na siya voluntarily, no? Actually, dili mo siya voluntarily, class, no? Why? Because ngano man, that is something demanded coming from the system of the body, no? Kaning pagginhawa na to, actually dili man, di ba kasuway na mukas kay kung mahimo na siyang voluntarily, class, the person has to kuano ka nasiya kuano nasiya kana nga ang si tawag ani nasiya katungod nga iyang pugnan iyang pagginhawa, but it is actually coming from the system. It was the system of the body that actually dictates the the nose, no, as well as sa kanang diri sa tuang tutunlan nga ginhawa kita in order for a person, in order for the body to survive, di ba? Kay mingon ta og voluntarily siya. So like for example, what is the reason why nganong di man kamulukso og lalom? Because you know the fact, no? You know the fact, no? Wala mo gi-allow imong self, no? Because you have the control of the will. Kani wa mo kay control ani, di ba? Ka control day kasi imong breathing. Kuya po kay ka no, matug ka imong kontrolon imong breathing, patay ka na, no? Kay nagpiyong sa imong mata o dili day nimo maingnan sugo imong galingon nga pagginhawa. So mapawngan kas ginhawa. Natawag siya not freely and voluntarily. So because the fact that when you are going kaning breathing, no, is something actually demanded from the system. Okay? Nakuha na to, class? So there is that stimulus that actually allows the human person to perform such act. No? Nasa knowledge ana, no? He knows the fact, but it's not coming from the free will of the person because it operates itself. Nakuha na to, class?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next example, kaning dreaming. Dili man nato makontrol ang atong damgo, no? Di man ta makahatag og consent, no, nga mingon lang ka imo ring pikpikon imo kaugalingon, no, mingon ka nga, "Hoy, kanang damguhon ako siya ron ha? Damguha gid ha?" Dili, no? It's not coming from your free will. Mugawas ra gid ang atong damgo sa iyang kaugalingon ra gid nga sistema, di ba? Pero mingon ka, "Sir, nalagi usahay sir nga magdamgo ko niya." Do not forget, no, that's another story because when you are going to kana bang ato siyang tagaan og kanang ato tagaan og explanation, you know, a dream is a day residue. Unsa man na siyang day residue? Those are the products of the things that you desire during your wake up time, no? Or kanang time that you're awake. Sorry. Not wake up time but the time that you are awake. So kung samtang nagmata pa ka, no? Di ba naman kita desires, no? Kanang magmata pa ta, no? Kanang magmata ta karong adlaw or dili lang karon, no? Usay Mr. Rulin, nawala siya kay the moment that I actually kuano mo lantaw ko diri sa ato ang kaning diri sa ato ang video, mawala siya, but that will just come back, no, later. So kana siya, class, no? Kaning dreaming. Kaning dreaming, class, is a day residue. So meaning to say, those are mga desires nimo, those are your intentions, those are kanang imong mga plans nga gusto unta nimo buhaton during sa time nga nagmata pa ka, but unfortunately wala siya mahuman, no, wala siya matapos. Usahay dili kalikayan nga naa man tay desires that is actually beyond our expectations, di ba? Like for example, na-crush ka ni Daniel Padilla. So murag lisod man kayo ang posibilidad no nga magkatakdo ang inyong Dani Daniel Padilla. So most likely ato na siya mahitabo sa atong damgo, no? Uh, ato na siya mahitabo sa atong damgo. It's because ang aim sa damgo, no? Ang aim sa damgo is to keep our mind no free from this what we call psychosomatic disease, or kaning to free our mind from any psych pain. Unsa na psych pain, sir? Of course mo na no, that will result psychosomatic disease. Like for example, mingon ka, di ba, how does it feel when someone actually nibasted nimo, or else uh, how does it feel when you have that feeling to that person, but the person actually treated you as a friend? So of course, 'di ba sakit, no? So instead nga masakitan ka, ang rule sa usa ka dream is to temporarily relieve that kind of pain that you are experiencing during the time that you're awake, during the time that you are conscious. Nakuha na to, Kwas? So,
Yes, sir.
so buot pasabot, arita, itong balikon, ang kaning dreaming nahimo siyang not voluntary, not freely, and not voluntary because it was actually operated itself coming from the system. Di ba? And that is something that is kuan kasi no, that is beyond the scientific breakthroughs. So mingon tagbayan scientific breakthroughs class, it has something to do with psychology na nga concern. Okay? What about hunger? Kaning kagutom nahimo siyang not freely and voluntarily because dili man ang tao no, dili man kinahanglan og will sa tao, namanya control of the will. Now, ang kaning hunger class, this is also dictated coming from the system. 'Di ba? Kung gutomon ka, so there is that stimulus that triggers the person nga, huy, kauna. You have to eat because I need also starch, no, in order for me to work well, no, in order for the system to work well. So of course, ang tao mukaon no, because mukaon ang tao kay kung mahimo ning tao nga voluntarily ning kaon, apatay ang tao, magpataka og kaon ang tao. Okay? So, mo na siya nahimo siya this is not voluntary, no? Not freely and not voluntary. So nahug siya involuntary. Okay? What about thirst? Same lang gyapon sa hunger, no? Ang tao uhawon, no? Pag ang tao maka-feel nagiuhaw na siya, that's the time nga ang tao coming from himself, no? Moingon na din siya, siguro no, I need to drink water because I'm already thirsty. What about kaning defecating? Kakuan mo defecate class? Malibang, no? Kaning malibang, kaning mo mag-urinate ka. So of course, ni-urinate ka, it's not because coming from your own will, no? Ni-urinate ka because that is actually dictated from the system nga oy dapat ka mo urinate kay puno na ko, di ba? Naman kay ma-feel sa imong lawas because of the presence of that stimulus. Nakuha na to, class?
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Okay. So,
Yes, sir.
do not forget sa human acts, no, the person actually freely perform, no, can freely perform, or the agent can freely perform whatever will be the things nga iyang mo nahunaan because that is coming from her own consent, no. There is no stimulus that actually nag-trigger sa usa ka tawo, no, nga dapat na niyang buhaton, unlike diri sa acts of man that you have to do something because there is that demand and there is that actually requires there is that actually demands, and at the same time there is that stimulus nga nag-urge sa ka tawo nga imuha ng buhaton. Nakuha na to, class? So when there's no something that actually triggers the person, so that is a human act. When there is that something that actually triggers the person to perform or to do such act, then that is the acts of man. Nakuha na to? I hope that is clear, no? Do you have a question? Any question? Do you have a question? Libo class? Hello?
Okay ra, sir.
Uh yes, I want everybody no to question if you are still confused, no. Do not forget sa word no naibutang siya freely and voluntarily. So meaning to say kani nga mga action no nani tawag da with the conscious knowledge and subject to the control of the will. So diri no the person has a control. Diri sa acts of man wala it's not freely and it's not voluntarily. So meaning to say the person does not have no that iyang kaugalingon nga free will or consent no nga para iya na mapugnan. Nakuha na to, class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
I hope
sir.
no, that is clear to everybody. Now, just ask no if a question or if you want me to elaborate more, so pwede gapon no. Can I proceed with the next slide? Sorry, nag-una na ko proceed.
Yes, sir.
Yan. Okay. So we have a classification of human act. So human acts may either be considered rational or irrational based on man's conformity or non-conformity to the dictates of reason. So dire no, ato ang tanaw no, ang kaning rational nga behavior o irrational nga behavior or the acts of man, it is actually coming from the dictates of reason. Na tinuod man gyud no. That is the reason why miingon din kano nga uh, kani example ang usa ka manag-uyab ang usa ka manag-uyab mingon din mingon ang babae nga makigbuwag na ko nimo lito so ngano makigbulag ka nako nga wala mo ko gibuhat sala nimo wala kagod ay kadaghan sala na nimong gibuhat nako gikapoy na mo ko nimo mingon sa den be tagay ko nako grason be so di ba so either the person will act rationally or act irrationally. Of course that is the basis is the reason no nagi na siya no so it was the dictates of reason so refers to man's common ideas about the decency or indecency of a certain act or manner or behavior so kani siya no aning dictates of reason the three classifications of action based on the conformity or non-conformity of the norms or standards of morality standard of morality. So we have number 1, moral actions, number 2, immoral actions, and number 3, amoral actions. Now, what is moral actions? So moral actions are those which conform to the norms of morality. Like for example, I know everybody knows about what a moral act, no? Kaning honesty, respectful. So of course, these are the behavior or these are the qualities of the person that are actually expected to the society. Di ba? What about the immoral action? So, of course, na example din, no? It is the contradiction to moral actions. The immoral becomes the contradiction by which naturally are those which are not in conformity to the norms of morality. So, of course, no, kanino, I've been repeating this one not just a single time, but for how many times na gyud no nga mingon ta kaning killing, kaning stealing. So, of course, this is completely a violation to morality. Di ba? If this killing and stealing is actually approved and accepted to the society and so therefore walay tao mo exist kadugayan mawala ang tao kaya ang tao magpinatyanay naman magkinawatay naman no so in relation to that kaning universal moral law kung dili siya ma-apply apatay no so that is why na-appeal gid siya sa norms of morality mao bitaw nang nabutang diya no sa ato ang pagtuo no na sa Biblia thou shall not kill thou shall not steal that is an example of the principles of universality or the moral universal law now we have number 3 no I'm sure dili kana no nakabalo ani no kaning gitawag og amoral actions are those which stand neutral in relation to the norms of morality so neutral siya no ngano nahimo mo siyang neutral actually bang wala nahimo siyang neutral it's because there is no specific measures that actually deprive the person or wala specific measures nga moingon no nga oy kana dapat ha kung dapat matug karon ha nagtug nimo ha dapat ha ang imong porma mag-ana ra gyud ka ha dapat mag-ana ra gyud ka hantod buntag dili pwede mo ana no di pwede mo takilid wala man no wa may magbuot na to no kana nga unsay sistema sa imong pagtuhog no naiuban matog manghimasa daan ang uban pod di manghimasa daan wa actually wa man ginisuko nimo ana no Wa mo gimingon nimo nga hoy hala, that is immoral, wa kaning himasa. Kuya na po kayo no. Di na pod mao. Now kaning sitting actually wala man na siya that is everyone no can sit the way they are comfortable no with their possession. Now siguro naalang tay nalay mga ano mga etiquette no mga kihangan na to like example atas pangaon. So of course that is coming from by kuana na siya class culture bound na sila. But there is no specific morality by means of sitting, di ba? Mangaon ang Pinoy na ilamisa, di ba? Mangaon ang Japanese mag sana mag squat and also the Korean. So actually wala man nagi kuan, wala may sakto, wala may kanang ingon oy sayop nang mag-squat ka o sayop nang magkuan, wala man no. That is accepted by culture. So wala siya, it's not actually in violation to moral actions because anyway, wala man say kuan na no, wala may masakitan, wala may mamatay, wala may makakuan aning paglingkod no. Wala may it cannot actually do any harm no towards fellow men. Okay? Nakuha na to class. To ayo.
Yes, sir.
Abi na ko kana nga wala man tingog. Man reply, no? Sige. Nakuha ra na to class. Is there any question before I proceed? Class?
Wala ra, sir. Wala ra, sir.
Okay, good. What about the classification of human act? So here nadiri no, human acts may either be considered rational or irrational. Manaday, sorry. I'm sorry. So let's proceed with number 5, the elements of human acts. So we have the 3 essential elements of human acts. So these are the following. Number 1, we have the knowledge. Number 2, we have the freedom. And number 3, actual choice of or voluntariness. Now, sa knowledge, this actually refers to awareness. And I'm sure that everybody, no, kaning gitawag na tog knowledge class, so of course, nakay kaalam, nakay kahibaluan about what that particular behavior or particular act na imong gi-perform, and you also have the knowledge about the possible consequence, di ba? Kay gitawag man siya awareness. Now, what about freedom? So freedom, of course, this is something that is actually referring to the liberty of the person. So being free from any external force impelled as to act. Subot pasabot, there is no external stimulus that actually triggers the person to perform such act. So dire kaning freedom. So by the word itself freedom, so of course meaning to say you have the you have the you have the liberty to perform the act without any intrusion or any interruption coming from the other people or any stimulus. So you actually have the full control of your action. Now we have number 3, actual choice or voluntariness. So refers to the actual concept from the one doing an act. So an action is willed. So of course, this is referring to the agent or the doer of the action. So actual choice or voluntariness. Mingon tag actual choice, of course, everything that we do, di ba, as an agent sa ato like mingon ko ninyo na natagak nga pitaka, di ba, dili man kita mawad-an og choice, no? In everything, no, in everything na pwede na to buhaton, there's always a choice. Di kina may tabo no nga magbuhat ta og usa ka action pero why choice, no, naagi na choice. Okay, now voluntariness, this actually refers, di ba, to the individual, no, nga the willingness or kanibang the will of the person to perform such act. So wala ray question class, wala ray nalibgan. Can I proceed? Okay, so we have number 6, the amount or degree of voluntariness present in an act determines the amount of degree of responsibility and in turn determine the amount of punishment or reward may be. So yes, no, definitely this is true because of course, ang kaning atong pag-perform, no, either it's voluntary or involuntary, there's always a corresponding rewards or punishment. Diba? Usahay ang ato ang gibuhat is not at all times no nga nagbuhat ta og kayuhan, we will get rewarded. sometimes magbuhat tag kayuhan gani mingon tanong nga sus wagi batasan gitabangan pa nako sa una nya karon maore ibaws nya ngana no. Either you're going to do good or you're going to do bad, there's always a corresponding result. It's either punishment or reward. Now, what are the kinds of voluntariness? Now we have this perfect voluntariness and imperfect voluntariness. So mingon tag perfect voluntariness, it actually no it is actually simplifies that the person actually has a full knowledge and a consent. Like for example, eating when hungry in the canteen. So of course that is considered as perfect voluntariness because the person who is hungry, no, uh, siyempre kung ang tao gutomon, immediately ang tao muhatag og tubag sa iyang kagutom. So that is the reason why gitawag siya perfect voluntariness because ang tao, you have the knowledge, di ba? You have the knowledge nga imong tiyan nagtingog-tingog na. So of course, coming from your consent plus kaning consent na to, coming from your consent because of that knowledge that you have, so mo na nga sige imong giallow ang imong self to perform such act that you have to relieve your hunger. Now, what about this imperfect voluntariness? So, no perfect knowledge nor consent. So, like, for example, both knowledge and consent are partial. Ang example diri, pulling a trigger while hands are being tied with weights tied in your index finger in front of another person. So, gi-imagine ninyo, class, kung unsa ni siya nga senaryo, class, kaya nasa ubos, try to imagine, unsa ni siya nga senaryo. So, mura siya ang probinsyano, no? Am I right? Mura siya ang probinsyano nga gipugos ang usa ka tawo no nga iyang silon no pugos ang usa ka tawo nga iyang mapul ang trigger no sa kining pusil no to actually shoot that person no nga na another person na siyang atubangan. Now nanong gitawag siya no perfect knowledge, actually it is not actually coming from his own motive, di ba? Dili man na motive nimo, no? Mingon tawag with full knowledge, there is the motive. You know what, you know already, you actually the motive is actually perpetuated. Unlike here nga no perfect knowledge, so meaning to say there is no perpetuation of this what we call motive. Walay motive, no? Wala kay actually it's not out of your intention, no? And also the consent because kana day nga gipugos imong kamot nga butangan og bugat kayo para imong sana imuhang ma-pull ang trigger. So meaning to say, you're not allowing yourself. There is no consent that happens. Nakuha na to, class? Ayo.
Yes, sir.
Okay. No, I hope nga. Wa pa mo. I know, class, nga duka-duka giron nga oras, no? But I am encouraging na everybody nga ayaw gid sa mo pagduka, no? Kuyog sa ta, no? So, unsaon man pag-identify. Now, diri, no, gihimo siya nga imperfect voluntariness. Do not forget, no, nagibutang rin, no perfect knowledge nor consent. Okay? So, wala siya perfect knowledge and at the same time, wala consent. Because, gihimo raman kang, sa laktod pagka-istorya, class, mura kag puppet, ani, no? Someone is actually triggering you or someone is actually urging you to do such act or to perform such act. So it's not coming from your own will. It's not being willed, di ba? Ug imong tan-awon, it's not being willed, no? There's no kana bang traces that we can actually tag this one or kanang we can actually call this one that the person or the agent of or the doer of the act is actually has a will to itself. Wala, no? Gipugos siya, no? Pulling a trigger while hands are being tied with weights tied in your index finger in front of another person. So, muna, ang atong ilhana na, imperfect voluntariness, no perfect knowledge nor consent. There is a perfect voluntariness with full knowledge and consent. Okay? So, I know, no, it's clear to everybody. Nakuha na to, class? Or,
Yes, sir.
okay. Let me proceed with the next slide. So, of course, we are going to distinguish now between direct voluntariness, also called as voluntary NC. This is the Latin word, no? When an act is intended for its own sake, either as a means or as an end. So meaning to say, mingotag, the act is intended for its own sake. It's not for the sake of someone else. And for the totoy or for the tuya, for mama or for papa or for lola. It's not, and also for the other mga tao. The end or the means, no, the purpose, mingutag means, because that's the purpose, no. What is the purpose of doing such act, no? Ang iyang telos, no, the telos as end, no, the end of that particular act is not towards the other people but towards you. Okay, like for example, mingon ta, he who intends to go to a party in order to drink with friends wills both the going to the party and the drinking with friends. Both acts, therefore, are directly willed. So of course, ato siyang sabton, ang kato ko nung tao or kani ko nung tao nga mo go mo adto og party, no, para lang makainom. Nana siya knowledge ana whatever will be the outcome, because going to the party is always associated with drinking, because you know already the personality of your friends nga kani sila nig-adto nila, no, nig-party na nila, digid mahitabo nga din sila mag-inom, so nagi na inom. So ingon ana usab, no, ang ipasabot sa direct voluntariness, like for example uh, mingon ka, no, nga moinom ka og vitamins ug mag-exercise ka every day in order to live longer. So that is an example of direct voluntariness, because you have the will, no? You have the will, and of course, asa man ang iyang terminal ana sa imong act is that towards kanang pag-inom og vitamins o to perform og proper exercise. Kisa may makabenepisyo ana, ang lain or ikaw. So of course, no, ikaw, no, the doer of the act. Nakuha na to, class?
Yes, sir.
Mm. What about the indirect voluntariness? It is also called as voluntary in causa or voluntary for cause. Nay reason, di ba? Kami tag cause, no? Sanhi, di ba? So it is an act which is not intended for its own sake, but which merely follows as a regrettable consequence of an action directly willed. So for example, throwing precious cargoes from a sinking boat to save life of passengers. So here, the throwing and losing of cargo is not desired or intended. It comes as a consequence of saving lives of passengers. Sa ato pa di ay, ang kaning paglabay sa mga precious cargoes, it's not intentional for the agent, no? Kaya ang purpose sa agent nga makasave of lives sa passenger. Now, what makes it indirect, it's because there is that stimulus that actually triggers the agent to perform or to do such act. Diba, class? Nakita ninyo, class? Nakuha ninyo ang kahiyan? Try to reflect from the presentation, no, nga ako ang gisend sa inyo, ha, no. Ang precious cargo, no, iyang gilabay, no, just to save lives of other people. So meaning to say, ang kanang nga particular act nga yang gibuhat, the means of the act is not uh, ang end sa usa ka act nga yang gibuhat, no, coming from his purpose is not directed towards him but directed towards another people. Nakuha na to, class?
Yes,
So
sir.
ingon ana, no, ingon ana siya. Now another example, another example. So ang another example is kani, no, joining kaning gitawag nato og clean and green project, no, in order to build healthy and uh, say tawag kani, a healthy and a clean nation. So mo na, asa man na siya, asa man siya mo fall sa direct voluntariness or indirect voluntariness?
Indirect.
Yes, there is a indirect voluntariness, no? Because there is that someone that actually triggers you not to participate or to perform the action. So kaning indirect sa direct voluntariness, wala, no, walay pagpugos or walay sa tawag kani, walay stimulus that actually triggers the person to perform such act. Iyarang kaugalingong kabubuton, walay external stimulus nga naka-affect. While kaning indirect voluntariness, of course, there is that external stimulus nga naka-apekto sa usa ka tawo para perform og usa ka action. So just like sa example, illustrative example diri sa ubos, no, nga cargo. Okay? So another example, ningon ang imong mama nga, hoy Mirian, buwagi na imong uyab ha kay actually wa di ko kauyon ana imong uyab. Numero uno, ako nakita way batasan. Nya mingon ning kasi imong uyab nga oy Kevin kanang sorry kay Kevin ha kanang di man ta ko ganahan may tabo ni pero kanang I think murag maoro say maayo kay kabaw ko nga di ra ta magmalipayon mingon sa Kevin ngano man di ay unsa man di mirian unsa man di akong sala mingon siya basta kana nga akong mama sad ay honestly lang di sad siya buto ni mugod niya I know nga di ta magmalipayon kung supak ta wala makigbulag na lang ko nimo. So asa man nato siya makategorize sa direct voluntariness or indirect voluntariness? Class, anyone?
Indirect.
Okay, no? So, sa indirect siya because unsa may asa may stimulus ato, asa may nakapa-trigger ato nga buwagan ni Mirian si Kevin.
Yung mama.
Iyang mama, no? So, when there is that someone that actually affect or can influence the doer of an act to perform the action, then that will be categorized or that will automatically be the part or the product of indirect voluntariness. So, nakuha ra class, tinaw ra?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, wala na pangutana before I proceed with another slide.
Wala ra ko, sir.
Okay,
Wala ra,
thank
sir.
I hope no nasabtan na class no. Anyway, please feel free to ask question if na wala masabti. Now, a human act comes from the will directly or indirectly. This distinction of direct and indirect willing or direct and indirect voluntariness raises a notable issue, and we have here two of the most important principles that is fundamental guiding truths in all ethics. So the principle of indirect voluntariness, a person is responsible for the evil effect of a cause directly willed when three conditions are met. Sa ato pa day na po day conditions. Number one, when he can readily foresee the evil effect at least in a general way. Okay? Number two, when he is free to refrain from doing what causes the evil effect. And three, when he is bound to refrain from doing what causes the evil effect. So those are the conditions no about sa indirect voluntariness. Now, but is the agent that is the doer of an act not always bound to avoid what causes an evil effect? So it's not the fact that the effect is evil a sufficient reason for rendering the act which leads to it unlawful. So atong ano no hinunuo no nga usahay sa usa ka circumstansya, it's not because nga ang tao ni do og evil no ningon rin sa sufficient reason na no for rendering the act which leads to it unlawful. Like for example, kani patay og lie, mapasado ba siya o dili? So ato continue. Not always, for sometimes the act has two effects, one good and one evil. So in this case, the following principle applies. Napagiday sumpay ni sa ubos, no? So principle of two effects. A difficult question sometimes arises as to whether it would be morally right to do certain actions from which good as well as bad effects allow. So usahay no kana nga ang atong actions no ato tong balikon diri no though kaning kuan diri no gilatag nga mga conditions no ang gilatag diri nga conditions class not at all times no nga like for example when we are going to do such particular kaning katong going back no sa example katong cargo iyang gilabay ang mga precious cargo for sure no nga pangutan-on si ato no questionon si ato anong gilabay mo to nimo nga imuha mo tong obligasyon nga imuha tong ihatod yang anong wa man nimo gihatod imo man gilabay. So of course kato though ang iyang gibuhat is coming from that gitawag nito practical no nga paagi but still no ang pangutana diha ang asa man makategorize ang gibuhat sa usa ka tawo, is it something for evil or something for good? So mo na siya ang gi-argue about dire no the two effects, one good and one evil. So let's continue no para atong masabtan. So For example, should a man be restrained from saving his honor because the reputation of a high government official will be destroyed from disclosure he has to make in his defense? Uh, please ko read class say please ko read and understand sa example. Sige. You can read it, no? Makita ninyo class? Please ko read. Okay. Naman na? Kanina class, kaning should a man be restrained? Kana lang. Naman na mo og read. Hello. Hello class.
Ano, sir?
Okay. So, kanino kay kuan man nino, it's a matter since we talk about morality, no? Di pa tamawa sa voluntariness of involuntariness of an act. Now, should a man be restrained atong usbuna from saving his honor because the reputation of a high government official will be destroyed from disclosure he has to make in his defense? So diri kanino ang kaning usa ka tawo, no? Kaning usa ka tawo like atong let's just assume no nga ang usa ka tawo iyang gireklamo ang usa ka government official, no? Iyang gireklamo ang usa ka government official siguro tungod kay nangurakot, ana ba? No? And knowing that when that particular government official is kung panlitan mapamatud-an nga kana siya no tinuod gyud siya ng urakot, so of course he is destroying no the image of that person. He is destroying the reputation of that high government official. Now, ang pangutana makatarungan nun ba nga ang usa ka tawo makaguba sa kanibang gitawag og reputasyon sa usa ka corrupt government official because kay iya nga iyang gisaysay or iyang gitug-an ang anomalya nga gibuhat sa usa ka government official? Para ninyo class. Anyone? Coming from this statement, no? Should a man be restrained from saving his honor because the reputation of a high government official will be destroyed from disclosure he has to make in his defense? Para ninyo class. Is this kanino is this reasonable no to actually disclose any information no coming from this high government official na magtukmod nga ang usa ka reputasyon sa high government official maguba no just because of kaniyang pagtug-an niyang pagsumbong sa kamatuoran. Para ninyo class, makatarunganon ba? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ngano man miss? Para nimo miss Chubby Cordero ngano man ngano kaha? Ngano why did you answer yes, no?
Yes, sir. Makatarungan niyang gibat kay para dili na mopadayon og manang kurakot ba?
Okay. No, very good, no? Very good. Okay. That's the answer, no? That's the justification. Usahay ang atong gibuhat no which is kanino mura siya og kanang if you can still remember kaning gitawag nato og katong utilitarianism kay numdum pa mo ko sa inyo nga understanding the self. Usahay sometimes to we have to sacrifice no single nga we have to sacrifice one's happiness or one's kana bang unsa man kalampusan no in order to actually uh, provide no or in order to give rewards to the majority or kanabang tagaan na to og dakong kaluag ang mga majority of the people. Kaning pag-destroy og reputation sa usa ka government official, of course no dili siya when we are going to take a look at it bati siya no because you are dragging the person down. Pero ang pangutana is kanino ang mahimo nga magtukmod sa katawo no nga mahimo siyang hayag mahimong nindot ang iya nga gibuhat, it's because it is not only in favor to that particular situation about sa usa ka tawo lang no naglantaw siya sa kung unsay maayong benepisyo sa iyang gibuhat. Kani iyang gitug-an sa tinuod, pwede man malaglag ang reputasyon sa usa ka high government official. Pero makatabang ni sa katawhan kay para sakto ka Miss Chubby Cordero no, maputol na ang iyang kurakot or pagmugna og anomalya no sa panggobyerno. Nakuha na to, class. So ingon ana usahay ang view no sa voluntariness o involuntariness of the act. So let's proceed no. Any question so far diri sa statement number 1?
Wala
Guys?
na sir.
Wala ra no, tinaw ra no. Now what about number 2? To shoot a child about to throw IED to the frontline soldiers in war. Is it morally right to do an act which entails bad as well as good consequence? Kaning IED class, bomba ni siya class. Bomba to the frontline soldiers in war. Now, to shoot a child about to throw IED to the frontline soldiers in war. Makatarunganon ba nga imuhang pusilon ang usa ka bata nga padung maglabay og bomba sa mga frontline soldiers sa panggubatan? Naipungutana, is it morally right to do an act, no? Which entails bad as well kay kaning pag-shoot that is also bad, especially imong gi-shoot bata. Pero sakto ba nga ang bata imong gipusil kay padung man sa mulabay og bomba sa mga frontline soldiers? Para ninyo class.
Murag sir.
Yes, sir.
Murag murag. Sige, Mr. Jasper, what is your justification daw?
Kay
Mr.
kung
Sorry.
ako ang
Sige.
maingon, sir, kay kuan, mas daghan mang lives ang ang posibilidad nga mawala ay makaltas kaysa sa isa ra ka bata nga luwason.
Yes, no? Definitely yes, no? Sakto. So, inana no ang justification niya, ha? Kay ang bata palunggol mo labay og bomba niya, nanong di man mo pusilon nga pwede man nimo pusilon gud nga dili nimo ulohon, tiilon lang, no? Kamuton. So pwede gyud, no? So mo na nga matawag na to no nga kana nga diri ang justification usahay no diri atong balikan di sa babaw o mo na nga usahay ang principle sa voluntariness o kaning gitawag indirect voluntariness could be pwede siya mahimong practical no nga reason no nga buhaton. So either buhat ang usa ka tawo og usa ka bad nga paagi in order to uh, produce or in order to create a bigger one kanibang gitawag na to og kaluag or a bigger nga kanabang in favor to what is create a bigger quality of goodness. Okay? Nakuha na to class. So I think no that is understandable naman no dili dapita no the principle of two effects. Any question class so far before we proceed with another slide?
Wala na, sir.
Anyone from Kwan? Wala na. What
Wala
about
na
the
sir.
others? So, klaro ra class, nasabtan na to.
Yes sir.
Sige, let's proceed with the next slide, no? So, yes, under the following conditions, the act itself should be good or at least morally indifferent, unconcerned. So, B, the evil effect should not be directly intended, but morally allowed to happen as a regrettable side issue. So, pwede no, pwede siya regrettable or pwede siya dili. There should be a reason sufficiently grave in doing the act. So mo na no nga katong pagpusil mo na nangayo kun yung reason nga sige para ninyo makatarunganon ka, it's because of course there must be a sufficient reason because if you cannot actually pass in this what we call the qualifications of reasons, then there is no way that the person is reasonably or reasonable for its side no to do or perform such act. Ito imong pusilon that ang sadi that evil effect should not outweigh the good effect. Di ba? So, ato tan-awa no, mura sa utilitarianism og style no nga. Of course, it should not outweigh the good effect no. Nibuhat ka og evil effect no ni imong gipusil pero actually maka-produce man siya og good effect on the other side which is much weight mas kuan siya no mas bugat pa ang kaayuhan kumpara sa ka daot nga imong gibuhat. Nakuha na to, class? Sige. So, wala rin pangutana so far? Wala rin question?
Wala, sir.
Now, let's proceed with number 11, no? The end of human act. So, an end is a purpose or goal. So, it is that for which an act is performed. So, it is the final cause of an act. So, here, nadira no gilatag kinds of ends of human act. So, what are the kinds of ends? We have intermediate end. So, an end intended as a measure or means of gaining a further end. So also known as remote end. So like dire no studying a subject, passing a subject, so that's intermediate. So atong usbon an end intended as a measure or means of gaining a further end. So kaning studying a subject. So what is a further end? So pag mga mas musunod ana. So of course passing a subject. So sunod sa passing a subject. So of course graduating from college, 'di ba? After graduating a college, find a kuan decent job. Uh, yeah. Sunod sa finding a decent job, receiving a decent salary. Oh, 'di ba? So that's an intermediate end. What about ultimate end? So an end intended for itself. So is ultimate in a certain series of ends or it is the crowning end of all human activity, also known as proximate or final end. So, become a professional agriculturist. So, like for example, mingon ta, what is the reason why? Nganong nag-study man mo karon? Because you want to become, mingon ka, I want to become successful someday, sir. O at least diretso na sila, no? Mo siya gitawag siya og ultimate, the end of human acts man. So, ultimate end, no? Nasabtan na nato, class. So, next we have, yes, nasabtan na, class.
Yes,
Ang
sir.
example. Now we have to number 3, absolutely ultimate end. So absolutely jud no, or greatest or infinite gitawag siya summum bonum. So the completely satisfying end or good. So complete happiness and eternal life. Mingon man day ngano nang hatag man kaday. Mingon lang ka mingon ra ka nga because I want to ano, I want to enjoy also with the everlasting life. O kaning eternal life. Nahimo kang nagtarong ka because nagsunod ka sa balaod sa Dios kay because you believe nga ang pinaka-terminal sa life is dili karon diri nga ato ang life diri sa earth but the afterlife. That is the eternal life ang kinabuhi nga way katapusan. Okay? So that is absolute. Kung naam gani ultimate na pagay mas absolute. Kay kaning motawag ta mingon tag to become professional someday or to become a successful person someday, napaman na siya sumpay, pwede siya mapusumpayan, no? Nya, pwede pa man ka pangutan-on nga, what about kung mamatay na ka? Kaning ultimate end kay kuan ni siya no, siya gitawag og greatest of pinaka-infinite good. So complete happiness. Why? What is the reason why ngano manghatag man kasi mong isip ka tao? Because this is something that can actually makes me feel complete as a person. Uh, that becomes an absolute ultimate end, no? Mm. Ah, kani po usahay mingon din ka nga nganong love man ko nimo? Mingon po din nga kay ikaw man ang akong kinabuhi. Char, no? Wala na ira ang reason. Absolute jud ditso no, ultimate and nakuha na to, class.
Yes, sir.
Ano kani si sir ba pila-pilan yung di ato ano no kay ah kuha na gud siya, class, no, illustrative example na gud na siya, class, no, pero that is true sad no. Mutan-on bitaw ka no, wag na usahay mingon ka nganong ako magyud nga sa kadaghan man. So sige no, any question so far? Wala ra?
Wala
Kung
ra, sir.
bati ra?
Wala ra, sir.
Sige no, if you have a question, please feel free good to ask question, no. So parang kuan lang no, parang dili na mo dili ta makuan ba no? Wala tay di ta makulangan. Okay? Sige, let's proceed with number 12. Now, determinism of morality. So the act performed is technically known as the object. So human acts that have intrinsic morality. So intrinsic coming from the inside are good or evil by reason of the object. That is the act itself. So such acts, if evil, are never permissible. If good, and if circumstances do not stain them, they are lawful. Some of them are not capable of being stained by circumstances. So, and these are always lawful and also of obligation. For example, is the duty of professing the truth of working justice to all men. So, diri, sorry, no, nahimo no ako pangutana. For example, is the duty of professing the truth of working justice to all men. So, kanino kaning pagkuano, pagsangyaw sa pagka matinad-anon, no? Is kaning mahimo ba siya nga kanang applicable, no, sa tanang tao, kaning pagsangyaw sa pagka matinad-anon. So of course, that is applicable to everybody. Kay ang gitawag diri no kay determinism of morality man. So dire atong sutaon, atong tan-aon og balik, if evil kuno are never permissible, if good and if circumstances do not stain them, then they are lawful. Kaning pagkuan, kaning pag magsangyaw naman, kaning unsa ni pagampo, kaning pag unsay tawag ani pagsamba, no? So unsay matuod. Of course, that is not, di man na siya maka-cause of bad, no? Wa man na siya, dili man siya makamansa sa kuan sa tao, dili man siya makamansa sa matag usa, no? Di man na makahatag og kabati sa matag usa. So of course, that is considered as lawful siya, no? Mo go ra gyapon siya or mo nag-abide ra gyapon siya, mo adhere ra gyapon siya sa kaning gitawag nato og lawful nga panlantaw, and also of obligation. So nakuha nako ningon re, the circumstances of an act performed determine its morality when the object does not do so. So kaning circumstances are various, but the most important are those of person, of the intensity of the act, of place, of time, of helping influences in the act, of manner, and of intention. But the last name, that is intention of the agent or doer, is the most notable circumstance. So kaning atong circumstansya, like for example, when we are going to do an act or to perform such act, damtay like kada iya nga rason, no? Like for example, mingon ko, ngano ang kanang tao nga mangawat mo judge na data dito dayon nga kawatan na gina sila, no, nga mao gina ilang trabaho na kawatan ka, no? Di ba pwede man pod nga ang tao nangawat kay circumstantially wala na gid siya mabuhat, no, wala siya kwarta, mangayo sad siya, manguan sad siya, mangayo pod siya, wala koy muhatag niya, no, kay mga tao wala salig nga kadakog lawas nimo nya manarbaho pod siya, wasay mo dawat kay palukaton og barangay, palukaton og police clearance, nya manarbaho pod siya construction, wa poy mo dawat nga construction kay wa pod siya sapatos, wa pod siya, di ba? Usahay dili man na ikalikay class, no, daghan kay mga circumstances. Now, what only matters most is kaning gitawag uno kaning gitawag og intensity of the act. So unsa man ang gibug-aton, no, sa imong gibuhat, no, ang imong unsa ni pag-perform sa usa ka act, unsa siya gibuhat, is it morally kuan kayo kana bang damaging kayo sa mga tao or not? Because if that is something, if that particular act is not does not cause any damages to the welfare of the humanity, then dili siya ingon nga dili acceptable. Number two, of place. So sakto ba, no, naba sa sakto nga lugar, naba sa sakto nga na even time, no, naba sakto sa sakto nga lugar, sakto nga time. Like for example, you are going to yield sa imong girlfriend, no, you're going to yield sa imong girlfriend in front, or imong makig-argue ka sa imong imong girlfriend in front or dia inside the bus. So of course, kana, no, something that is damaging, di ba? That is also damaging kay mura mag imong gi kuan ang iyang reputasyon ana, imong giguba, no? But the possibility could be ang mga tao sigbidyuhan mo, no, nya post mo social media. So, and also of helping influences in the act. So, what are the influences? So, like for example, if that particular act is something influence coming from the people or coming from someone else nga, ang iyang gi-influence nimo kay pwede mo kano mingon nga pangawat ngadto. Pangawat dito, bantay di ka mangawat, di na kita migo. Pag dali to kuan ka bugas gikan sa inyo kay atong dali magluto-luto ta diri. So, kinsa may nagkuan na, no? the influence unsa may impact. Like for example sa influence, kung imong gituman ang influence na kay choices, it's either mutuo ka mununot ka sa influence or dili ka mununot sa nag-influence nimo. So usa po na. And of course the manner, or the manner of performing the act. So also that is very important, and of intention. So unsa may intention nimo, what is actually your motive? Why is that so nga imong nang gibuhat? So if that is something voluntarily coming from your own consent, magdepende po na siya, no? So muna in the end ang kaning agent or the doer of the act, ang pinaka-importante is kaning gitawag na tong notable circumstance. So depende ra ginano sa circumstance, like for example miingon ta kaning uban kaning mga badyaw mingon, dagko kay mga lawas, sige lang panlimos, guri-guri ang mga bata. Yes, it's so easy for us to judge those people, but the question is, daghan na mga government nagkuha na nila class, nagtabang ana nila, pero di man gid ingon nga tiunay nga tabang. Unya usa pa sad pod, you know why? There is something in relation with, or there is something nga naka affect ba sa kana nga sistema. Why? Kana gid sila ka sa ilaha mao ginilang panarbaho. Actually ang ilang panarbaho gid didto mao man ang kanang manlangoy og dagat, ana ba? Diri sa atua god may dagat diri, no? Og naapoy pier, di naman pud sila kasud kay naman na gwardyado man ang pier. So dili gid sila, less ra gid kay lang chance nga makakwarta sila. Going back sa una, as I can still remember, sa una dito sa carbon, sa una diha pa man tong bangka sa Bohol. Sa una nagmularga kag Bohol na man na diha nga mo travel dito. Mo to sa una. Pero karon wala na may bangka sa Bohol na mas piron, no? So mo na nga daghan kayo og mga badyaw into nag-asa-asa na sila. Di man sa nila nga ni travel sila dire. Nihawa lang gid sila, it's because tungod sa kanang mga gubat, mga gubat nga na ba. So mo na nga mingon ta og atong tan-awon sila, no? Unsa may mga circumstances sa ilang action kanang mangayo sila. Actually dili man sana nila sa kay that is notable by circumstance. Why? Numero uno, wa ba na sila wala ba sila kasuway og kanabang formal education. Wala, no? Og mag-undergo sad og formal education, dili pud ingana kasayon, because you know why? Sakit biya atong tiyan class o hawon sad ka, no? So mo na nga imbis nga mo eskwela sila, asam sad sila bound, wa man po ni pledge nila nga mo pa-educate nila at the same time mohatag nila para bound kaon. So it's lisod kay siya, no? So muna those are the bases kaning determinism of morality. Okay? Nakuha ra nato class. Any question so far? Anyone?
Para sir.
Okay. So ano mga basihan sa circumstances. Now let's proceed with 13, no? Of circumstances in general, the ethical principles are this. Number one, let us analyze this. Number one, an indifferent act is made good or evil by circumstances. Mga gid, no? Kaning to act indifferently, no? Is made good or evil by circumstances. Like for example, atong balikon kaning mendicancy, no? Of course, the usual way para sa tong lipunan karon mingon man din, stop mendicancy. Kana ba manghingi class niya, di mo muhatag, no? Naman gid sila balaod ana, but mo na, no? You are trying yourself to become indifferent with the what is the kanabang the usual way the people actually make a response to their fellow men, or kanang mga badyaw, no? You in yourself, imong gikuanin ko galingon to become different, no, to have that kind of concept or prinsipyo. Pero usahay mahimo mang bati ang pagpanghatag, mahimo mang maayo ang pagpanghatag, but that is actually matters with kanang gitawag natong circumstances. So it's a matter of circumstances. Depende ra na ba. I can still remember before niingon jud ko atong lalaki nga nitrabaho og opisina. Siya, mapriso jud ka do, gingnan ko ba? Mapriso jud ka do, wa ba ka kabaw nga na. Yes, pwede gid mapriso sir no. Actually I am not afraid about that one. Unsa may ikaso nimo nako? Ako sing giingnan. I have my freedom kung hatag ko og di. Besides, we are living in a country of democracy. Nya, mo na nga di mo manghatag, kung di mo manghatag ayaw mo panghatag. Ako hatag ko kay kabawon ko maluoy. Nindot kay mong sinina pero di mo kabaw manghatag. Akong giingnan. Wala wala siyang tingin nakig-argue gigukas no. Kay usahay mahimo mang bati ang ilang panlantaw sa tuay. Ni akta that way. Kani pong mingon tanong nga kani pong uban no, kaning mga kuan, kaning mga babay na mga kuan no, nang kana ba nga luoy taon pod mahimong mahimong kanang escort. Oh, kana sila actually dili man pud ta ka judge, dili man tanan nga mga babay nga kanang nagkuano nga bati no or ang bati ang ilang intention. It's just so happen nga naa mo qualification ang atoa nga society. Like for example, pareha ng trabaho daan, daghan kay requirements na pay mga medical, samot na gid ron nga nay COVID, na napoy swab test. So by circumstances, those people becomes a victim. So ningon na a good act may be made evil by circumstances, but an evil act cannot be made good by circumstances. So ang usa ka kanilang good act may be evil, but made evil by circumstances, just like my example, no? Nga nanghatag ko. But an evil act cannot be made good by circumstances. So like for example, kaning intentional nga pagpatay, no? Kaning intentional nga pagpatay, kaning intentional nga pagpakauwaw, is that good? Is that something that could bear good? Dili, no? Ang katulang good act that may be made evil by circumstances, pareha atong ganiha no nga gilabay ang cargo mga precious cargo, ang bata gipusil. Pwede to siya actually kuan man nito no gi-emphasize dito no that the evil should not outweigh with what is good. So actually wala man siya ni outweigh sa kaning gitawag na to og good, kay imong gipusil siya though it was evil, but that can be justified because it creates a greater or a greater weight of this what we call goodness. Kani evil act cannot be made good by circumstances because there are certain acts that is actually uh, kanang nagkuan sa tao no mo na siya directs the evil act that actually directs the person's behavior or actions to a particular circumstances. So, mo na siya ang justification. We have number 3, an act is made better or worse by circumstances. Yes, no, tinuod no. Usahay we tend to ano to act like for example at usahay mas atong palab-anan usahay pod kuan po no ato mang mas palab-anan nga kabati, palab-anan sad ka kamaayo. So, depende siya sa circumstansya, no? Pareha nang like for example, ang kaning naitaw no nga nakasa nimo, no, naigistorya ang tawo nimo. So ang imo pong gibakwi niya is imong palab-anan, no? Like for example, giingnan gi kanya nga patias ag batasan nimo nya imo na din giaway, no? Imo na din gikitab-kitaban si mong babay, mong gipakauwawan. So parehaan nung naka-remember pa mo kwa sa kwan? Naka-remember pa mo atong kwan, dili worth it? Plus, nakakita pa mo ana? Plus?
Chicken cordon, sir.
Chicken cordon. Kato no? Those are pwede po to sa example na to dili no nga ang act ba is made better or worse. So naa siya na full sa worse no. But ang situation nila after sa ilang confrontation is the worst turns into better. Kay di ba ato unta no actually dili mo kita to dapat may ato pod no na both sides kay mura og nay something naapoy mga bati nga nabuhat sa usag-usa ba. Di man gid kay ngon when we are going to make judgment man gud out of the video atong makuanan to katong dato no pero napoy gamay nga kuan no napoy gamay nga kasipanan putong babay kay kuan pod kana nga kuan po siya dito no nagkuan po siya dito pwede ra gito i-undergo gid unta og kanang kuan pero we cannot judge anyway. So mo po na iyang reaction. So next we have a circumstance gravely evil ruins the morality of the whole act and makes it evil. Tinuod no? Kaning circumstance kaning by circumstance panlitan that is gravely evil. So of course wala na gyud. Wala na gyud. Morality of the whole act makes it evil. So like for example, mingon ta si kaning I am sure no this is very famous kana bang kasi kay nang kuan ay nakalimot man nung ko si Robin Hood. Oh, palitan si Robin Hood kawatan man siya no. Pero mga wat sa iyang ibalik ang kwarta. Pero what if iyang ihatag sa mga pobre? Wala na gyud no. The circumstances is gravely evil no. Anya ang yapong act is also evil because mingotag circumstances is gravely evil. It's because of the pastor, di ba? Mga pastor grabe kay mangulikta og kwarta sa mga tao, mga buhi sa mga tao. So that is the circumstances there. Now, what about kaning gitawag na to og morality of the whole act that actually makes it evil? So it is actually the response of the ni Robin Hood on how he responded that particular circumstances. So yeah no, kung panalitan kuha pa to niya giuli pareha sila kawatan, pareha na sila tanan no, puro na bati ang ilang gibuhat, wala na nakita nga maayo nga mo fall there is at least a moral act. Now, we have the last, no? A circumstance slightly evil, which is not the entire motive of a good act. So, does not utterly destroy its goodness. So, kani, sample yapon, Robin Hood, the same lang yapon. Kanang gibuhat ni Robin Hood, the circumstances slightly evil. So, katong sa mga pare, nga ngulikta. But the entire motive of the act kay siya no ang yang motive siyang act kay pinaagi nga kawato niya ang kwarta para iuli niya sa mga tao. No, it's not totally bati. Kay nga naman ang iyang motive kawato niya iya man iuli og balik sa mga iuli man niya sa mga kabus ang mga kwarta. So nakuha na to class. Usahay no kaning kuano technical po kayo no. Daghan kay siyang mga sikot-sikot ba. Mao na no nga I require everybody to please read in advance. Okay? So, na pangutan na class, wala ra na sabtan na class.
Wala na sir, sabtang na.
What about sa uban?
September, sir.
Okay, no? I hope no nga kuan na tin-aw ra. Next, of intention and special, the ethical principles are this. A good act done for a good intention has an added goodness from the intention, and a bad act for a bad intention has an added evil from the intention. Tinuod man gano, what is good is good, what is bad. Mabitaw na nga ang Ginoo ato lang example no kaning mga kanibang mga word of wisdom ba coming from the Bible no nga inspired by the creator no but by God kana nga mo tanong ang usa ka kuan ang kaning good act it has to be pure no wala gid siya halo kay ang bad act can never be justified man into good. So bad is bad, good is good. So pareha po nas giingon ni Socrates nga the correctness of the rightness and the correctness of an act is different no so lain sila. A good act, number 2, we have a good act for a bad intention is wholly evil if the intention is gravely evil or if it is the whole motive of the act. So kanino example na ni a good act for a bad intention is wholly evil which is the intention no is gravely evil. So like for example, you're going to run for a president because you promise to the people nga when you are in the position kuan no mo na imong kuan no nanghatag kas mga kabus nanghatag kas mga kabus sa time nga nangampanya pa ka pag nakuha na nimo ang imong intention ang imong intention day is bad naglingkod na dahil mo mangurakot na dahil ka no so that's an example. Dire a good intention cannot make a bad act good no dili gid no kung if your intention is good, but a bad intention vitiates a good act. So of course, no, ang kaning bad intention, makakuan gid siya, makamansa, makakuan siya, no, unsay tawag na, makaguba sa kaning maayo nga buhat. So despite the fact nga nindot pa na imuhang buhat, but when your intention is bad, then of course that cannot be justified as good. Now an indifferent act may be made good or evil by its intention. So daghan, no, daghan mga unsay nga nani, daghan siya og mga criteria, mga principles. So na question tas, any question before I proceed with the next slide?
Wala, sir.
Kani klasa ang example aning an indifferent act may be good or evil by its intention. Like for example, pareha ato, no, atong gibuhat nako nga manghatag, no, nanghatag ko, that is something that is indifferent, no, but no, kaya ang normally mo ko mga tao dili mo sila mohatag because they don't want those people kuno nga para mo dili mo dako ang my intention is good, no, pero naman po uban nga manghatag pero lain ang ilang intention, di ba? Nanghatag ka kay tungod parehaan ng kuan, no, kana bang nakay bati nga tinguha sa imong isig ka tawo, imong gitagaan pero naaday kay tinguha niya nga bati, di ba? Imong gitagaan siya, tagaan mo kwarta, tagaan mo siya pahinanglan pero nakay intensyon niya nga bati. So of course that is mahugya po siya bati siya, no. So H, we have the norms of morality. A norm is a rule. So it is the measure of a thing. So of course, muna, that's the measure of a thing, the thing that the one that I mentioned a while ago. The norm of human acts is the rule which shows whether they measure up to what they should be and indicates the duty of bringing them up to full standard of what they ought to be. So that's the norms, ha. So mingon bitaw na ang kaning norm, mingon tag norms, of course it oughts everyone not to perform its duty. So with the full standard, bringing them to the full standard. Dili kay ingon nga when you are going to do something, so of course mingon ka kanilang, no, dili lang ko kutob nga level. It ought mo bitaw na nga gitaw siya ought. This is a modal to obligate, no? Kung sa in English pa modals of obligation, no? Mo na siya ought to act. Now the norms of human acts are the law and consents. So mo din, no, kaning the norms of human acts ang atua day nga panukdanan is kaning law, since we have the full knowledge and the full consent. But naaning duha kaning law and consents. Kay tungod law, of course dili pwede nga abi natay full knowledge about ana and we also have the consent ourselves so that we can functionalize or perform at any time. We also have to consider nga natay balaod nga sundon. And at the same time also, since we have a consent to ourselves, we should somehow, no, think twice or ask ourselves by the use of our consents. So more precisely, the one norm of human acts is law applied by consents. Sumingon nga, hala, dili to nako binuangan si kuan kay actually baya ano kana nga iyag yung gihatag nako yung tibuok kaugalingon, no, yung panahon, yung oras, yung effort. Di ko magbinuang niya, no. Usahay that is coming from the conscience. Now law is an ordinance of reason promulgated for the common good by one who was charged of society. So mingon siya the one who was charged of society, so those are the law enforcer. Mabtaning what is actually the nature, what is actually the very purpose or the origin of the establishment of the law. So actually the law is why na-exist ang law. It aims to actually withstand in between sa kaning freedom sa matag tao. Kay usahay man gud kaning freedom na to without boundaries, dili na mo gud nato kalikayan nga makatamak na punta sa tawhanon katungod sa pikas. Like for example, if imong happiness is mapatukar ka, then naapo kay silingan nga mo duty og kanang gabi. Imong silingan mo duty og gabi, matug siya og buntag. Now, how are you going to perform that one? So of course now by observance of law, pwede gyud ka, no? Pwede ka makapatukar but naa si kutob limited nga oras. Unya, coming from your own conscience also, since we talk about the human act, oh, imo na po ng konsensya if you are going to pakusgan ba na mong taman or dili. So, that is part of your consideration because there's no specific law nga nag-ingon nga nakasilingan nga call center. So, of course, na specific nga law nga para nimo nga magpatukar ka pila rebullion, wala man. That is that can actually be handled by means of conscience naman. Pero naay balaod nga nag-disallow sa matag individual nga magpatukar beyond 10 PM. Kuha na to, class?
Yes, sir.
Okay, ningon dili law is for the common good, no? Dili lang only the law is actually being established for the benefit of a single person ha or sa pipila lang ka mga tao mingon tag common good. So of course and it is understandable that it is for the majority. Now special regulations for individuals or groups are called precepts. So a precepts is like a law in as much as it is a regulation or an ordering uh ordering onto good. So a precept is unlike a law in as much as it is rather for private than for common good. So mo din na siya gitawag siya private, no? Dili siya balaod, no? For common good. So it is actually preferred to be applicable for the private. Okay? So unsa man ni siya, no? Unsa may private gitawag is this the status of the person in the society? No, it's not the status of the person of society but the status of individual. No? Nahimo lang siya, no? Kay kanang gitawag siya special regulations for individuals or groups. So na sila mingos nag regulations like for example, no, nata sa kada grupo na gina sila i-apply nga mga kuano mga precepts. Na sila kana nga gitawag nato siya og kanang kuan kas ba unsay tawag na panagkasabutan ba. So it is a minor compared to law. Kaya ang law mo punish man, no? Ang precepts is however na siguro tay kana lang like for example pareha na mag-conduct og meeting, no? Since we talk about precepts, kanang mag-conduct og meeting, so of course ang kanang mga tao diha, no, na putay gitawag og kanang sakto pod nga pagkuan og meeting, no, pag unsay tawag ani pagkuan og meeting, pag-conduct og meeting. So kanang mga tao diha nga mga attendees, so of course napoy mga sets of regulations and mga rules nga kailangan i-follow, no? Na para nga hapsay siya nga mapatigayon. Kay ang law mo god kaning law by such understanding, no, coming from our knowledge, ang kaning law has an ability to punish man the person, no, depending on the severity of the sin committed. Nga naman ang kaning precepts is something like nga kuan na siya mo correct for the wrongdoings. Okay? Any question? Class?
Wala, sir.
Iduka naman mo, class. Okay. So I hope no you're still alive. I think we're almost at the last part. Sige. So conscience is the practical judgment of human reason upon an act as good and hence permissible or obligatory. So or as evil and hence to be avoided. So of course ang atong konsensya, no, maingon man ano nga it is actually something that permits the person to do with or to make decisions about what is right and what is wrong. So conscience is the reason judgment of the mind. So it is not an instinct, ang kaning instinctual, pareha ng kagutom, mukaon ta, that is instinctual man, no? A sentiment, no? A prejudice born of custom or what moderns call mores, a small voice, a little spark, or celestial fire. So dili siya, it is pronouncement of reason. So coming from the knowledge, di ba? Because without the correct knowledge, of course, you cannot be able to make a good conscience. So correct or true squares with facts. So with the help of that knowledge, So of course that can actually guide the person to actually build a good conscience. Certain, fully assured, and unhesitant. So the conscience is certain, wholly assured, and unhesitant. So of course no kana nga dili siya dili siya something na kana ba nga magduduha, no? Kaya atong conscience, like for example when we are going to kana no makakita ta og mga butang, so of course mingon gid atong conscience nga kayo nagkuha kay actually dili man na imuha. Naanay mo murag mo spark mo kuan sa tong mind, no? Maatuang mo naunaan. So that's the use of conscience. So what about kani, no? The last part, the golden rule. Do not do unto others what you don't want others will do unto you. So, not having heard something is not as good as having heard it. Having heard it is not as good as having seen it. Having seen it is not as good as knowing it. Knowing it is not as good as putting it into practice. Um, so, sa ato pa no, grabe kani si Kong Z, no. Kani si Kong Z, grabe kay siya, no, kay ang iya yung gi-emphasize diyan, no, nga ah kuan ko no, not having heard something ko no is not as good as having heard it. Sa ato pa, if wala ka kadungog, no, wala ka kadungog ana, you can never say that parehas na sa istorya kwas, no, you can never say that something is good or that something is delicious not unless you haven't experienced tasting it, or you haven't experienced to taste that one, di ba? You can never say that he is beautiful, or you can never say that the experience is very beautiful, very exciting not unless wala ka katry, di ba? Lain sa kay mingon ka no nga nindot kay sa Amerika, no, kuan kay dito dagag snow, nya bugnaw kaayo, pero mas lahi ra gid nga naka-experience jud ka dito because you can actually give a concrete information about that one. And nindot pud kayo siya, no, o paning-ingnan kaning the golden rule kay uh, kana nga ang kaning the golden rules, do not do unto others what you do not want others do unto you. Universal moral law gapon siya in the view of kaning parehong understanding the self, ang kanang western philosophy, no, nga mo if you want someone to actually um someone understands you, then also you have to be like so. No, you have to act someone like you're understanding. You also have to respect other people because mo gina no mobalik man na sa tua. If you do not know how to do something na makaayo para sa imong isig katao, then of course it will bound everything will bounces back to you. Okay? So I hope no you learned something from this afternoon. So do you have a question, class?
No, sir.
Um, sure? Wala na question? Anyone? You know, this is to share lang to everyone.